So we're gonna go by seniority?
Everyone can have this.
Do Ms. Clark?
Yeah, I'm fine.
You fine with it? Okay.
Angela at the front desk?
She's the temp.
Oh,
You
okay.
will need it.
I haven't seen her.
No, it's just the one time I was like, I'm not gonna need it.
Good evening, everyone.
Good
I'd
evening.
like to call to order our November 14th, 2019 meeting for the Planning and Zoning Board. The time is now 6:38. We actually have two board members absent, both our chairperson and vice chair, so I'll open up the meeting. We'll ask that we have a moment of silence and pledge of allegiance led by Ms. Shepherd.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
May we have roll call, please?
Margaret Shepherd. Yes. William Wiley.
Here.
Stephen Hunt.
Here.
James Gallen.
Here.
Anthony Brown.
Here.
Evelyn Harris Clark.
Here.
Moeti Nakumbe.
Here.
John Gustafson. Renee Burgess. You have a quorum.
Thank you. Being that we have two permanent board members out, I would ask that both the first alternate and second alternate receive voting rights for tonight's meeting. At this point in time, I would like to open up the floor for nominations for a chairperson for tonight's meeting.
I move that Evelyn Clark be the chairperson for this evening.
Second.
Okay. Do we have any other recommendations? Hearing none, Ms. Clark, will you accept?
I accept. Should I just move down there or sit
Yep.
here?
It's completely up to you if you'd like to move down, or we can pass the gavel down to you if that's more convenient.
Yeah, we could just do that, that's fine.
So at this point, I'll turn the meeting over to you, Ms. Clark.
Okay, thank you. Welcome, everyone, and welcome to our residents of Riviera Beach. Good evening. And let's see, acknowledgement of board member absence notification. Mr. Gagnon, was that information received for the record?
Yes, ma'am. Both the chairperson and vice chair provided notification to staff that they would be absent tonight.
Okay, great. And any additions and deletions to the agenda?
We have no additions or deletions to tonight's agenda.
Okay. And now I'd like to have a motion to accept the agenda, if all that agree. Could someone make a motion and someone second?
So moved.
I second.
It's been motion, second, and I guess properly moved.
Roll call.
Roll call.
Okay.
Do we have to do a roll call
Roll
on that?
call. Margaret Shepherd, Yes. William Wiley,
Yes.
Stephen Hunt,
Yes.
James Gallen,
Yes.
Anthony Brown,
Yes.
Moeti Nakumbe,
Yes.
Evelyn Harris Clark.
Yes.
Unanimous vote.
Okay, let's go on to the next approval of the minutes. I gathered everyone has taken an opportunity to go through the minutes, or they remember what was in the minutes. May I also have a motion to accept, first of all, I should ask, were there any addition or exceptions to the minutes? None? Okay.
None from staff. No, ma'am.
Okay, great. Then if I can ask for a motion to approve the minutes, a second, and a call.
I make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
And roll call, please, if that's applicable.
Margaret Shepherd,
Yes.
William Wiley,
Yes.
Stephen Hunt,
Yes.
James Gallen,
Yes.
Anthony Brown,
Yes.
Moeti Nakumbe,
Yes.
Evelyn Harris Clark.
Yes.
Unanimous vote.
Any unfinished business from last meeting?
No, ma'am.
Okay, good. All right, Mr. Gagnon, I'm gonna turn it over to you to get this meeting going with new business. The floor is yours.
Yes, thank you. So we have one item under new business, which is letter A. That is a resolution of the City Council of the City of Riviera Beach, Palm Beach County, Florida, approving an application, which is staff number SP-19-09, from the Inner City Youth Golfers, Inc., requesting site plan approval to construct a single-story, 3,602 square foot Inner City Youth Learning Center and Golf Museum on vacant land totaling approximately .315 acres, located at 125 West 13th Street, identified by multiple parcel control numbers, north of West 12th Street, south of West 13th Street, and west of Avenue E, and providing for an effective date. At this point in time, I would like to ask Ms. Ann DeVoe, our senior planner and GIS specialist, to provide a presentation for the board and general public. Ms. DeVoe?
Thank you, Mr. Gagnon. Good evening.
Good evening.
Planning and zoning board members, and DeVoe Senior Planner, Development Services, for the record. Okay, as mentioned, the applicant is Inner City Youth Golfers, Inc., and the project name is Inner City Youth Learning Center and Golf Museum. We'll call it an acronym of INCY. The applicant is requesting site plan approval to construct a single-story, 3,602 square foot building that will function as a learning center and museum. It should also be noted that a similar project was approved by the
CRA, Community Redevelopment Agency, and the City Council in 2015. However, it expired, the site plan approval expired due to not having a building permit.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
A similar project was approved by the CRA and the City Council in 2015. However, the site plan approval expired because there was no building permit.
Thank you.
You're welcome. This slide, you'll see that the site is outlined in red, and it is located between major streets, which Mr. Gagnon has already mentioned. The land use is community facility, CF, and the zoning designation is CF also. The land use and zoning designation is consistent, and the use as an educational facility is a permitted use in the CF zoning district. That you see there outlines 6 parcels, and these are the 6 parcels. And surrounding those parcels to the north is a multifamily residential use, commercial uses, vacant residential parcels. To the south, you would have a church and vacant commercial uses. To the east is vacant commercial uses, and to the west is single-family use. These parcels, these 6 contiguous parcels have been joined by means of a unity of title that was recorded in April of 2015. The lot size is 0.31 acres. The building gross floor area is 3,602 square feet. And the access, ingress, and egress is via West 13th Street. This is the site plan, and just to point out a few elements on the site plan. The site, it will be surrounded in the rear with a 6-foot finished masonry wall. And the rest of the parcel or the site will have aluminum fencing. There is, at the beginning of the site, the ingress and egress, there will be a rolling gate there, and it will be open during hours of operation and locked by a lock box or a Knox box in the evening. There's also 2 areas on each side, north and south, that a pedestrian can enter. It also has a gate. It's a 4-foot gate there as well that will be open during the day.
Pardon me, perchance, do you have a pointer so that not only the audience can follow along when you're making the descriptions, but also to make it clear as you discuss the egress?
Sure.
The wall and the metal fencing, et cetera. So if you had a pointer,
Okay,
reference.
how's that?
Great.
Okay, so this is how you enter off of West 13th Street. And right here is that gate that is a rolling gate there. And when the site is not in use, it will be locked by a Knox box. I think that's the term. There's also 2 areas like right there where a pedestrian can enter. There's also an opening there and a gate as well. And there's one here as well.
Excuse me, ma'am. Just for clarification, I don't know whether you misspoke or not. The entrance will be on not 13th Street, but on 12th, right? Correct?
13th Street.
You'll be
right?
coming in from 13th.
Yes, correct.
Yeah, so previously,
right here.
There was a roadway construction project that reconfigured what we call today 13th Street.
Right.
So to clarify what the terminology I use is I call it Old 13th Street.
Okay.
Which is to the north. I think when that roadway reconfiguration occurred, there's still some addressing that almost demonstrates as 12th Street.
Right.
But the larger boulevard being New 13th Street, we'll call it, that's not the direct ingress and egress point. That ingress and egress is actually from Old 13th, which is to the north.
Got it. Got it.
Thank you. Okay, this is the second sheet of the site plan, and this details the freestanding sign 1 and a wall sign as well. This is a landscape plan, and it should be noted that the applicant worked diligently with staff to provide additional landscaping to enhance the aesthetics of the site. Staff is pleased with the landscaping that they did provide. Those are the details of the landscaping and the plants. This is an east elevation. This is how the building will look. Staff recommendation. City staff recommends approval of the site plan application SP-19-09 with the following conditions of approval provided in the staff report. A 2-year landscaping performance bond for 110% of the value of landscaping and irrigation shall be required before certificate of occupancy or certificate of completion is issued for the addition. Number 2, construction and landscaping improvements must be initiated within 18 months of the effective date of this resolution in accordance with section 31-60, parentheses B, close parentheses, of the City Code of Ordinances. Demolition, site preparation, and/or land clearing shall not be considered construction. Building permit application and associated plans and documents shall be submitted in its entirety and shall not be accepted by the city staff in a partial or incomplete manner. City Council authorizes city staff to approve future amendments to this site plan administratively so long as the site plan does not deviate greater than 5% of the originally approved site plan.
Madam Chair, can I ask a question? On that, what is the basis for 5%? 5% of what?
So we currently do not have a code section that provides for administrative action. So if it comes to something that is measured by a numerical value, so if it's a dimension, then the 5% would be 5% of that dimension. On occasion, though, that 5% falls on administrative staff, specifically the director, because if there's, let's say, an architectural feature that changes, it's tough to really demonstrate if it's within that 5% threshold. So how staff has used that is really if there's little to no impact to the overall site, if it still is meeting the intent of what was previously improved, then that falls within that 5% threshold. That's how we've used it historically.
But they can't cut back parking or make additions to the size of the building itself without exceeding that threshold, I would presume.
Right, so with parking, they would have to provide parking per our code. That would be non-negotiable.
Right.
Let's say there was a minor modification based on field conditions where they had to change the dimension of the building a few feet one way or the other, that would fall within that 5% threshold, and based on this condition, it would allow staff to allow the project to move forward with that amendment.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. This development must receive final certificate of occupancy from the city for all buildings and units approved within 5 years of the approval of the adopting resolution, or the adopting resolution shall be considered null and void, requiring the applicant to resubmit application for site plan and special exception approval and reinitiate the site plan approval process. All future advertising must state that the development is located within the city of Riviera Beach. Fees and penalties in accordance with City Code Section 31-554 will be levied against the property owner and/or business for violation of this condition. Once approved, this resolution shall supersede any previous site plan approval resolutions associated with this property, causing previous site plan approval resolutions to be null and void.
I have a question, if we go back to that slide, just for clarification. Number one, when is the project to start? When is the project expected to
Could
be
you speak into the
completed?
mic, please? We can't hear you
Sure.
down.
When does the project start? When do the applicants expect the project to be completed? And how does that balance or square with the certificate of occupancy of all buildings and units approved within 5 years? I would have thought that as soon as the project had been completed, that the certificate of occupancy would have been pursued and received at that time. Could you just clarify?
Are you referring to the prior site plan that was approved?
No, this statement here, certificate of occupancy from the city for all buildings and units approved within 5 years of the approval of adopting the resolution, et cetera.
Okay, so they have 5 years to receive the certificate of occupancy.
Yeah, but I think Ms. Clark's question, though, is they have to start construction within 18 months.
Correct.
And that still leaves 3.5 years to get to a certificate of occupancy or completion, and that's,
Correct.
seems excessive.
Yes,
And that's why I'm
might-
asking, when does the project start? When do they expect it to end, to figure out if that 5 years fit within those parameters? That was the question.
Okay, we have the agent here, Mr. Daniel Diaz, that would probably be able to shed more light on that as to when you plan to start. We have,
This is Daniel Diaz, agent for Intercity Youth Golfers. To answer your question, I believe as soon as possible, we are ready to submit for permitting. And thank you so much. We're ready to submit for permitting and proceed with the permitting process, and soon after construction start.
Okay, again, that sounds like it's immediate, so that's all contingent upon what happens here, maybe some other steps. Okay, that's fine. But what is the longevity in terms of when you expect the project to be finished? Because any project, as soon as you finish, you go through the certificate of occupancy process, and there you go. I don't think that they're going to wait 5 years. You're not going to wait 5 years. So what, are you expecting to be finished in 3 years, 4 years?
Sooner than 3 years and 4 years. I would say within 1 year to 2 years for construction.
So
This is clearly a maximum, right? So,
Right, that's
This is
what.
worst case scenario.
So
Madam
if I
Chair.
may, to try to clarify, so these are our, what we consider boilerplate conditions of approval. The time frame that's required in order for the applicant to pull a building permit, that's the 18-month time frame. So that way, if you do receive the development order and approval to move forward, then you do have to move forward in a somewhat timely manner. Unfortunately, what happened with this project previously is they went through the approval process, however, they didn't move forward to the building permit phase, so the project basically expired, so that's why they're back in this process once again. So long as a permit is applied for within that 18-month window, it will really cause the project to be seen as an active project, really in perpetuity, if the development team does certain items. The 5-year window, staff has put that there as somewhat of a safeguard, so if a project does commence, and let's say they do some minor foundation work, that if the project stalls over an extended period of time, and let's say the development team is very savvy and they keep reactivating building permits and refreshing them, which is, it's time consuming, but it's something that could be done to keep a project active so they wouldn't have to go back through the whole development process again. What the 5-year window is intended to do is to prevent somebody from dragging their feet for so long that, you know, we're gonna get into new building codes, and
Right.
it's no longer really timely as far as what the community's expectations were when the development order was originally issued.
Thank you. I get that. I was just looking for clarity. You've explained that, so the 5 years is just a threshold, but we're anticipating that the project, in terms of certificate of occupancy, isn't going to reach that 5-year period.
We would hope not.
Yeah, I would hope not. It's just, you know, to clarify for everybody, because on the surface, it just looked weird.
Madam Chair,
Long.
can I ask a couple of questions?
Sure. you recognize.
And I think, let's go back to the previous issue, and I don't want to bring up a lot of old details, but why did the process fall apart the last time?
That would
Was
be a
it
question for the
was it
applicant.
funding or some other issue that is not expected to recur? Because we don't want to start construction and then have a derelict building there.
Understood. I don't have that answer, unfortunately. I'm not sure if Danny does either, or if the,
I spoke previously with
Okay.
the owner to clarify this. I'm anticipating the question being asked. The reason, due to the fact of the time delay, was due to funding and the acknowledgement of not understanding the 18-month time period from the owner's part. Previously, there were other designers involved, and I'm the architect in the project, and I got involved right after the 18-month expiration has occurred.
Okay.
So,
We don't expect that to occur under your tutelage then?
right, we're
Excellent.
pushing for the permitting and soon
Excellent.
after construction.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair,
Sure, you recognize.
I'd like to ask one question. Mr. and Mrs. Knowles are not here tonight, and I know the public would like to know who they are. I know who he is, but is there a reason why they're not here? I'd like the developer to answer, if I may.
Pardon me?
I'd like the developer to answer.
Yes.
The gentleman that was just
Mr.
here.
Dion?
He said he spoke to him, that's why.
Yes.
To clarify, I'm not the developer, I'm the architect.
The architect, who's the developer?
Developers are involved with the whole funding and a bigger scheme of construction of
Okay.
projects.
Okay, so that's why they're not here, because it has not been funded yet? Is that what I'm hearing?
Oh, they're not here due to the fact of other other meetings that they,
Yeah.
what's the word?
So I
Other
actually, I was able to speak with Mr.
Obligations.
Knowles prior to the meeting. Unfortunately, he had an out-of-town meeting that he could not change the date to.
Okay.
He wanted to make sure that, of course, if he could be here, that he would be here. Actually, I received a message from him just prior to the meeting, kind of wishing us all luck, so to speak. Not to say that we really needed it, but unfortunately, he just had a previous engagement that was out of town. But we didn't want to push the meeting back further because then we're gonna get into holidays, and we wanna make sure that we can move the project forward as quickly as possible.
Okay, that's all I want to know. I think the public would like to know. I'm sure they saw him when they were trying to get the project moving. But as you know, the public mind kind of deviate from the project, and I know I had to go over and kind of find it. And they were over there, and I had to take a couple people over there, so they thought he was going to be here tonight, or her was going to be here tonight. That's why I asked the question. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're
May I
welcome.
have one more question?
Sure.
Just more related to the 10 months that it's taken to get to the point of bringing this project forward. Is that the normal cycle for a permit process here in Riviera Beach? That just seems like an incredibly long period of time for a small project.
This project you're
Yes.
referring to? Well,
It was originally submitted in January.
yes. So what we do is we do a preliminary review of site plans to ensure that everything is there according to code. If it is not, a review is then prepared for the applicant. And in that review is the comments from the various departments or agencies. And it is up to the applicant then to make the changes that have been requested by the departments as well as planning and zoning staff. So we have had, I think, three resubmittals on this particular project to get the site plan to where it is.
But, okay, my question is really that,
Yeah,
is
so-
10 minutes or 10 months normal?
10 minutes would be too fast.
10 minutes would
but-
be a little too short. I would not allow.
Yeah,
suggest
ultimately,
that.
10 months is longer of a window than we would want for a project of this size. I think there were, I guess, some issues that took longer time to work out. I don't have the actual dates in front of me as far as the resubmittal dates, if there were some periods of time that the development team needed in order to reconfigure the site. I remember early on in the project, there was a lot of conversation as far as the elevation of the site and ensuring that ADA access was provided between the sidewalk and the building itself. So I know that they played with a couple different configurations, whether it would be on the south side of the building or on the east side of the building. So to answer as concisely as possible, 10 months is too long. We want to do better. But unfortunately, in order to make sure it was done right for this one, it took that much time.
Well, it's certainly better than going to 13 or 14.
Very true.
If I may, just for the board members, I know that the Knowles representatives are not here, so just for disclosure on my behalf, I went and physically looked at the site, and I did have a chance to speak with Mr. Knowles just to get a little bit more understanding of the ICYU Learning Center and Museum. And as a city, we have been engaged with this project, trying to get it off the ground for almost 3 years, maybe a slight bit longer. And as I understand for Mr. Knowles, and he could correct me if he sees this a session of P&Z, that they are self-funded, so they're very well capitalized, and it took them a while to get there. So I want to pass down to the board members that as we go through this is the ICY Community Newsletter, and it talks all about the program, what they're doing with the children. And also, I'm just going to pass to my right the configuration of what the building is actually going to look like, so that we can have a little bit more information and we can just pass it back and forth. So this is going to be a great asset to the community. It's taken us a while to get here. They are capitalized. I think everything is pretty much straightforward. I do have some questions, but I'm going to let you go ahead and continue. And I would ask that for board members, if we could aggregate your questions, and then I'm just going to start with Ms. Shepherd when the young lady is finished, and get all of the questions out. So as you're listening, aggregate them, and then we'll start with Ms. Shepherd, and give you a chance to take a look at the collateral.
If I may, Ms. Clark, as well, just prior to the end of the meeting tonight, we'd just like to make a copy of the documentation passed out to the board just for our own file records.
Sure, I'm transparent.
We want to make sure that if someone wants to take a look at the records, they can also
Okay.
learn more about inner-city youth golfers.
Sure.
Ms. DeVoe.
Was this the last?
Yes.
Yes. That or prior to building permit approval, provide a drainage report sufficient to demonstrate compliance with City and South Florida Management Water District, South Florida Water Management District, SFWMD regulations. Specifically, demonstrate compliance with policy 1.5.3. That policy says, all new development retain on-site the rainfall from a 1-hour storm that statistically occurs once in 3 years, an amount estimated to be 2.7 inches. Roadway and parking lot finished elevations shall be at or above the peak stage elevation for the 5-year, 1-day storm event. Building ground floor elevation shall be above the 100-year, 3-day storm stage elevation or 1 foot above the crown of the road, whichever is greater. The storm water system of new developments shall also be designed to comply with the water quantity and quality requirements of the appropriate permitting agency, but post-development runoff shall not exceed pre-development runoff. And that is it for the conditions, and this concludes my presentation. I'll be happy to address any other questions the board may have.
Sure, we're going to start all the way with Ms. Shepherd for questions and just move on down the line.
No questions, but I do want to make a disclosure. Since we're making disclosures, I've been knowing Malachi for about 10 years. He's a great HUD official out of Washington, D.C., and I sit on the board with his wife, the Recreation Department, and I met Malachi down in Hollandale. And I've had the opportunity to listen and know that Malachi is a great golfer. He's known all over the world, and he's had great tournaments at PGA. So this is no shyster event. I spoke when he brought it to the council meeting, and I voted to have it in then, or spoke to have it in then, and they approved it. So I think we should move this project with no questions, really, because this is a great opportunity for our black youth that absolutely know very little about golfing. So that is my meeting with Malachi, and I asked for him to be here because I know him, and I did have some of the seniors that I took over there because they were thinking about playing golf since the new Ivy Green, Heron Estates are being opened. They were kind of interested. So that's why I asked, why was he not here? That was the question. No other reason. Thank you. I'm through. I'm sorry, Madam Chair.
Mr. Wiley.
Yes, again, I agree very much that it's, this program is very much needed in our community. Hey, no problem. I think it's very much needed in our community. My profession is, I'm an honors algebra teacher at Roosevelt Middle School, and a lot of kids there, we don't have the opportunity for the kids to be able to learn a sport, to have, that entails discipline, strategy, utilizing resources, and being able to, and by the way, I happen to be a great golfer also. You see my necklace, I got my little golf necklace here and everything, representing. I used to be good at one point. But anyway, I learned, in the process of doing that, and also military duty, I learned discipline, I learned strategy, I learned these different things. Did I always practice these on the golf course? Absolutely not, because you guys didn't have the museum here then, so
Yes.
maybe I'd be a better player if you had one earlier. But, and also learning etiquette, the kids learning how to utilize etiquette and how to act in certain situations, especially when you're on the golf course, which actually relates over into life. The question I have also is that she said it was funded already, so the city would not have to fund anything. Is that correct? The city?
That's what my understanding is, but I would defer to Mr. Knowles once he gets back, really to clarify this for the record. So I don't want to speak for him. This is
Right.
general conversations that he and I had just recently.
Right.
So, hopefully he can clarify for everybody.
Got it.
I don't want to speak for him.
All right, and that's not really a concern of mine. That's more importantly, I was kind of worried about the hours that were going to be there, and I saw in here that you will have golf simulators also. Is that correct? Any specific amount of golf simulators that you will have?
We're intending to have 2 simulators.
Two simulators?
Yes.
Is there any way possible to have more? And the reason why I say that is because I had a friend of mine before they had Golfsmith that was on Palm Beach Lakes, and I had actually talked. They had about 5 golf simulators there, and I talked him into actually renting these bins out to the local golfer, because a lot of times, a lot of people when they practice, they don't want to go outside and deal with the environment, deal with the elements. So they would rent out these bins for an hour and charge the public a certain amount of money to do that, and that way you can actually draw income from the museum also, and plus other kids can actually see people who actually know the sport pretty well and learn from them also. And he actually did that, and he did it at one also in Palm Beach Gardens, because they actually moved there from Palm Beach Lakes to Palm Beach Gardens, and now they're out of business. I don't know what happened, but they utilized it there, and it was a pretty good idea, and it made them a pretty good sum of money. So I don't know whether you were interested in that or not, but that's something to.
We'll look into the possibility of adding additional.
Right, and that way. And what about your parking? Because I was looking on the site that you showed me also, and I saw those. I saw the area, and I was looking to where if you had about maybe 20 or 30 kids come, or parents coming to see, would there be enough parking for in that area the way it's kind of developed without intruding on the
Park on the street.
without parking on the intruding with the neighborhood there?
Sure, can we go to that diagram to discuss the 10 parking spots?
While we're going to that slide, I remember with previous discussions with Mr. Knowles, this site is actually just north of the Boys and Girls Club. So there was discussion of some potential synergy between either having, tours from the Boys and Girls Club, or if there was a large event, let's say in an evening
Right.
hour at this facility, maybe the Boys and Girls Club parking could be made available.
Right.
In order to help accommodate that event, and,
Okay.
and vice versa, really. So we're hoping that, both of those facilities can interact together in a really positive manner.
Right.
I don't want to speak on behalf of the Boys and Girls Club, but it
I was
seemed
going
like
to
it would-
suggest that also,
Yeah, it seemed like
and probably
a good connection.
recruit kids from the Boys and Girls Club to
Absolutely.
actually come over to be able to learn the sport and everything. So I just think from a standpoint, I would be enthusiastic about that, just to be able to see kids enjoy a sport that they're really not given opportunity to learn, because golf is a very expensive sport. So it'd be very good if someone can come in and teach them the basics, teach them the etiquette, how to use the resources, and how to enjoy the sport properly. Thank you.
As well as the Judge Rogers site, they have kids over there. That would be nice to connect with Judge Rogers' site to interact those children. So it's a lot of children in that site.
In our area.
I'm sure if we ask. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Oh, and hours of operations. What was that again?
I received the hours of operation from Malachi Knowles stating Monday, Friday, 10 to 7 p.m., 10 a.m. to 7 p.m., and Saturday morning classes for golf classes.
Got it.
Sunday undetermined.
Good. Good. Thank you.
Sunday is what?
Undetermined.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Hunt?
All my questions have been answered. Thank you.
I have no questions, but I do have a comment. I think this would be a great opportunity for our kids here. I'm glad somebody finally decided to do it.
Question?
I have one question. I noticed there's presently a half semicircular turnaround right there. Now, is there going to be space for the public to turn around at the end of the street on the side plan?
Yes, a Knox box is provided for any emergency turnaround vehicles, and stabilized sod is provided as well for those emergency vehicles. If you go to the site plan, you could see there's ample space on the ends of the street to do also a turnaround for a smaller vehicle. This area. And here for emergency vehicles, we provide a Knox box to open the gate as needed when it's closed, of course. Hours of operation is open.
Thank you.
Okay. Oh, let's keep this slide up. If I'm correct, across the street is a retirement home, correct? That building that's in the far left-hand corner at the top, across the street from there on 13th Street, to your left. That building right there. What are those buildings over there?
Go back.
If I'm correct, that's
Go
an
back.
abandoned building.
In the corner, the top corner of the left-hand side, there's a building.
Just out of view.
Yeah. Can we go with over there?
Okay, all right, so this is better, so you got that. What's across the street? Is it a multi-level senior citizen home in someone's house? On the other side of 13th Street? Yeah, right there.
Yes, this is a home.
Okay, and the building that's to the right of it?
It is.
If I'm
single
correct,
family as well.
if I'm
It's
correct,
residential.
they're in the process of building a two-story home there. So I know I went over and looked at that. And it's a two-story home that's being built in that area now. It's been there for about 4 years.
Yeah.
And they've been building that for a long time now.
And let's go down to the bottom of 13th Street where the site location, that building right next to it. What is that building right there?
This is a single-family residence as well.
Is that
And-
yellow home, that yellow home? And you're gonna put,
This is where you're,
yes,
this where you mean?
right,
Yes, it is a single-family home.
okay,
on that
and
business.
there is going to be some sort of wall, you said, between that house and the actual facility of the golf?
Yes, that's correct. In the rear, a 6-foot finished masonry wall here.
That's existing.
There's something
There
there
is
now?
a wall there
There is,
already.
oh, there is?
Yes.
Oh, okay, all right, well then that's fine. And also too, can you just point out where the putt-putt area is going to be? I believe you're gonna have a putt-putt area on the outside?
Currently, we excluded that from our site plan application. But the idea is to, if possible, creating a putt-putt area.
Okay, so for right now, it's just excluded? Okay, all right.
But that's future phase, hopefully, it will be
Okay,
added.
all right, that's fine. Mr. Moita, you have any questions?
I have no questions.
Ms. Clark, one more question. Just to piggyback on what she said earlier, and like I said, I'm a golf head, so that for a museum to be there, to be beneficial to the city and the community, that a putt-putt area or the golf area or to, to practice putting. I mean, I know you say you excluded it for, I guess, with space reasons. Would you have one inside of the building to a area there where they can do that there? Because I know that's very important to the golf game.
We have space on site that
Right.
that has potential to include a putt-putt green.
Right.
And as well, we're intending a multi-purpose space, which could be configured into a putting green rather.
Okay, because I know that's what the kids are going to have the most excitement out of, is being able to go there and just kind of putt and get. That's how you literally get started with the game, by practicing that. And I know there's something to being an avid golfer.
Also-
the first thing you do is you go out there and you work on your putting game, because that's where the money is.
Also,
got it.
the exhibit space could maybe incorporate a putting green as it's designed.
Okay. Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you.
Madam Chair, one more question to the gentleman. As we talk about the Boys and Girls Club and Judge Rogers' space, I notice they have a big space over where Judge Rogers is at. Maybe as we talk, we can maybe talk to them about having like a little putt-putt over there, because I see the kids are kicking ball or whatever you call they're doing. Maybe we could talk about that to expand going over there with the children. Just something to think about,
That's a
because
good
they
idea.
are playing kickball over there. And the Boys and Girls Club out front, they're playing kickball. So rather to configuring their space, can talk, Mr. Knowles and his wife can go over there, maybe talk to them about. I think they'll like that, the putt-putt space. I never did it, so I don't know. I went out there one time and fainted, I think, so that was,
That's how hard it is.
yeah, it was pretty hot out. I went to Long Pine and paramedics was called, and so how the seniors are gonna do it, I have no idea, but maybe Mr. Knowles can kind of talk them into maybe a shady space over at the Boys and Girls Club, because it's very shady over there. Thank you, Madam Chair.
And one last question for me. Could you just point out where the signage is going to go? And also, too, that this is pretty close to Broadway, and Broadway is our gateway into Riviera Beach. And this is perhaps something that you can pitch to Mr. Knowles, that on Broadway, there should be signage pointing in the direction that this is where the museum is, unless you're going to show that it's a lot more visible to Broadway. If not, then maybe they can consider some signage pointing to that. After all, we got signage pointing to a barbecue joint. We should point here to the museum. Could you point where the signage is going to go?
Currently, we have our a monument sign on this location, which is adjacent to 13th Street.
But not visible from Broadway.
We could only provide, well, that could be discussed as we move forward, adding signage to indicate a directional.
Oh, well, that's fine.
Yeah,
It's just a point of comment that I just noticed, that if this is going to be a marquee attention getter, and it's the only one like it in the entire United States, at least for those individuals driving up and down Broadway, we can have some sort of signage pointing that it's over in this nook and cranny area of 13th Street. So it's just a point of comment.
Madam Chair, may I point out that Mr. Knowles sit on the CDC board, which is a part of the CRA. And may I clarify one thing? We have people in our community that make a living selling barbecue. And I think I think his name, what is his name, Mr. Gagnon, that have the barbecue over there? Willis Williams. He's a fine, upstanding gentleman in this community. He's an African-American that sells wonderful barbecue. He lives on the next street from me, and he's a very nice person. While I was ill, came over and fed me barbecue. And I don't want to say a barbecue joint. He is, let us do that, be respectful. If we did the Riki Tiki, which the city manager did, we fall all over the place. And I think he deserved that respect. Thank you, Madam Chair.
That's noted. I did not mean anything disparaging. I just want to point out that others have asked for signage, and I think this is deserving of equal amount of signage. So it was not to be disparaging.
It is. Some things are disparaging. And like I say, once again, Mr. Knowles sit on the CDC board, and I think Mr. Knowles is a very powerful African-American man. And I know that Mr. Knowles will speak on the behalf of the CRA to put a signage out there. I don't think it's no problem. But to talk about our fellow persons, it's very degrading to me, but it's being a African American male, we should speak out a little bit more about our people. Thank you.
Chairperson?
Sure.
All right, just one last question for myself. Like I said, I spoke about the simulators and having more simulators. And I'm telling you, that's going to be a push for that because especially for a lot of people who are into golf, we usually have to travel to John Prince Park to play golf. And now they have the Golf Shack now to where something now will be very local. So you definitely going to need more than two. And I wanted to ask, I think this would be very important that the public should know. What will be the charge for participating or coming in to the museum to be able to see the museum? Or will it be free of charge?
I don't have that information.
All right, and the programs that you will have, because I saw in the pamphlet that they had there were different programs that they have, and for the kids to be able to participate, would there also be a fee for those kids to be able to join those programs, or would that be funded also by the company?
Good question.
I don't have that information.
Okay. I didn't know whether you had that readily available because I have a couple recruits for you as soon as possible. Thank you.
Madam Chair, that's why I specifically asked Mr. Knowles to be here to answer these questions. These are some of the questions we need to ask him and his wife about a fee.
Mm-hmm.
Our children, I don't think it's me speaking, should be charged. And that's why I specifically mentioned about the Boys and Girls Club and the judge, their little facility, to go over free of charge to do the little, that's me just throwing that out, sir. Since you're in contact, and Mr. Gagnon is in contact with Mr. Knowles, and he's a fair man, so I think. Thank you, Mrs. Madam
Okay,
Chair.
well, I think if we don't have any further questions, that probably wraps everything up. And I'm pretty sure if there were any outstanding questions that the Knowles would, and partners would either be at a city council meeting, et cetera. And plus, you can reach out individually to get any other clarification. So, Mr. Gagnon, next step in terms of what you need for this body to do?
If it pleases the board, city staff is recommending approval of this to the city council. So we'd look for a motion from the planning and zoning board to do that.
Okay, I'm going to ask one of our board members to make a motion and one to second.
I move that we accept this proposal and recommend it going forward to the city council with the additional comments and suggestions provided.
Second.
All in favor, we'll have a roll call.
Margaret Shepherd,
Yes.
William Wiley,
Absolutely.
Stephen Hunt,
Yes?
James Gallen,
Yes.
Anthony Brown,
Yes.
Oeti Nakumbi,
Yes.
Evelyn Harris Clark.
Yes.
Unanimous vote.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. Would you like for me to proceed on to the workshop item?
Yes, please.
Okay, we have one item under workshop items for tonight's meeting, letter A, which is an update on GIS mapping of ongoing planning and zoning projects. The last page of the planning and zoning packet that was distributed to the board and available for the public is currently presented on the screen for review. We also have a full-size printout in the back of the council chambers if anybody else would like to take a look at the hard copy document. I'll make note of the fact that this is still in draft form. Mr. Josu Ledger, our senior planner and GIS specialist, has spent a great deal of time getting the map to its current point. However, we wanted to bring this forward to the board for additional input to create ultimately a finalized map that would be available to the general public online. I do also want to, I guess, tip my cap to Mr. Hunt, who had asked a lot of good questions and kind of pursued this further. So at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Ledger to kind of go over the map and walk through some of the elements, as well as entertain any suggestions that the board may have. Mr. Ledger?
Good evening, Josu Ledger, Development Services for the record. The map, it's pretty much, we're trying to capture some of the current projects. As the board requested before, you wanted to kind of like a list of what projects that we have going on, so that you guys can also know that when are they coming to you, or which project will be coming to you, so you have an idea how many projects in the pipeline. I do also want to mention that I had the opportunity to meet with Mr. Hunt, who provided a great deal of inputs. And from that conversation, there is a draft that is not yet provided to the board. It's still in draft form, very raw data that's not completed, so I didn't want to just give that to you to confuse you even further. But this map, as you're looking at it, specifically the table that identifies the progress, location of properties, and the project names, there are modifications that is proposed to further additionally provide more information as it relates to, for example, council districts. That would be one of the columns that as part of the draft that we're working on right now. So if you guys have any questions, the layout, it's something I'm looking for inputs as well, you know, as far as it's a challenge when this map starts to grow. To keep it in one page will be a challenge, so we definitely want to see if, you know, whatever input the board can provide and recommend as we move forward. Maybe one of the things could be keeping it to a certain time frame. That eliminates a prior project that's probably out of the pipeline, or having a set amount of projects that we delineate, or intensity of projects based on how major the project is. That's when it makes it to the map. We want clear guidelines on exactly what projects should definitely make it to this map, to keep it in a way where it's not over convoluted with informations. If you guys have any questions, any further inputs, we're here to answer and discuss.
Madam Chair, can I make a couple observations?
Sure.
First of all, I greatly appreciate having the support of both Jeff and Mr. Ledger to take a shot at this. This, as you recall from our previous meeting, we're trying to do a 6-month look ahead of projects that are known to exist or are in various stages of approval, but then also those that are expected. And I think that we've got a strategy for how to approach it, and I think we can address most of the technical questions. I think as a frame of reference, what we were talking about is being able to slice portions of this big graphic by city council districts and make a chart that is available to each district representative and thereby give them more advance information about what's coming from all of the departments, not just planning and building. So one of the things that we're working towards is a set of layers that include all of the city departments, including the planning and the building departments, of course, but also the CRA, the utility district, public safety, building, streets, and stormwater, and parks and recreation. So the whole idea here is to get a collection of a 6-month lookout rather than just dealing with a project at a time as it comes rolling in for approval. I agree with Mr. Ledger's comment that this could get pretty busy, and so we'll find ways to work through that, because the graphic capability does allow you to drill down and make it easier to look at the details without having to just always print it out on a letter-sized piece of paper. But I think this is a great beginning, and it does need a lot more work, but I think it's a great start to start stepping back a bit and looking at the overall set of programs and initiatives that are going on, not just addressing one at a time as they come forward. Thank you.
Questions, anyone?
Yes, to the planner, I want to make sure that we are respectful as we go into the mapping of the city. As you know, the council are sometimes intense into their planning dialogue, let me put it like that. And I would hope that the planning and zoning, as we are labeled by some of the best residents, that the planning and zoning are very, very delicate, and some of the things that we put before planning and zoning, that we are always, or most of the time, we are very delicate in our planning. So I would hope that we would stay abreast on being very articulate in how we come about our, what is the word? That how we plan on how we speak to one another. That we try to keep abreast, Mr. Gagnon, and I think we do a good job. I really do. We have sometimes a little off-key of speaking, but we try to stay abreast on how we speak to one another. And I want to keep it that way, and just try to stay eloquent on just how we speak to one another. And thank you. I really don't know what to say.
If I may, Ms. Shepherd, I think
Yes.
that, you know, one of your talking points is communication, and we think that having this information in a map form will allow for additional transparency and
Yes.
help, you know, really communicate with stakeholders, whether it's residents, business owners, anyone that's interested in our city. So I think this will be one tool that we can really focus on to help communicate, which is very important.
Yes, thank you. I think you put it well.
Any other questions or comments, rather? Just one is, this isn't in chronological in terms by date of when the projects are in the pipeline. Is that something I believe that we talked about too?
I think if I may, I think what we had talked about is that It would include existing projects that are going through the approval process
Right.
that may have been through planning and zoning but not yet approved by the council, or those that are already under construction and things of that sort. So those are current projects. And then to do a look ahead to maybe 6 months out of things that are starting to come in, such as the golf organization that's been in planning and zoning's hopper for 6 months, or for 11 months now. So those kinds of projects would be visible and identified. I think one of the things Mr. Ledger mentioned was there can be a lot of data behind this, so there's an additional Excel spreadsheet that provides additional information about each project, not just relying on the map itself. And we really haven't finalized the amount of information that's available and things of that sort. But my expectation is by the time we get streets and the utility district and the CRA and a few other organizations, there are probably going to be 40 to 50 projects that are at some stage of active discussion at various points. So we're talking about something that could grow to the 40 to 50 project range. I don't think it's going to go to 2,000, but unless
We might have fainting staff members if we.
then we
get
do. Yeah, that's right.
I would think, one thing I want to say, Mr. Hunt, also that, again, I think it was a very great program. Can you imagine a company or a business that's coming to the city of Riviera Beach now to be able to come to one place and be able to see what's all going on, to be able to see what previous projects here, what businesses are here, even for a business to come here to make a decision on whether this would be a good place for them to come, depending on the environment. So I think that's a very good idea to be able to have something to where someone now can predict your environment, predict what your whatever your business is, the kind of what your customer is going to be, and having all this information in one place, and then knowing when it's going to be here, or when it's going to be developed, or where it's going to be at, just for location purposes. I think this is a great idea, just to be able to have everything in one spot and have it streamlined, just to be able to see everything. So, good job, Mr. Hunt. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. One additional point, in early preparations for pulling this whole thing together, I have had conversations with almost every senior leader in the city departments and things of that sort. There's still a few that I need to talk to, but they have been uniformly supportive of the effort of doing this. The data collection is relatively modest, and they're very excited about being able to see an integrated look at who's doing what to whom. And so I think the general consensus that I've gotten from everybody I've talked to has been very positive and supportive that this is not going to be additional work and not going to be a burden on them.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good job. Do we have any other comments? And I just want to put one last thing on your plate, since you've done a really good job, and that is that many municipalities, their P&Z board members, go through some sort of class or certificate course or seminar. I don't have a proper name for that, but I do know they're out there. Could you just follow up, just to give you one more thing, just to see if there's some sort of class or online or wherever we can go here in the close by in the county that we can be just as much on par with other P&Z board members from other municipalities. I know it's out there. Someone spoke to me about it, but if you could do that due diligence,
Sure.
I would appreciate it.
Mr. Gagnon and I will work on that.
Terrific. Okay, if there are no other comments, let's go to general discussion, to public comments.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, Madam Chair. I know we did have a gentleman that wanted to speak under public comments. I'm not sure if he was able to submit a comment card yet, but so long as he submits one prior to leaving tonight, hopefully that will be acceptable to the P&Z board.
Well, if he has the card in and if he's available, let's go ahead into that now, if that's fine.
Hello, everybody. My name is Jeff. I'm not here to talk about planning or zoning or anything, but I wanted to bring public awareness to a new senior medical center that has opened up here in Riviera Beach. It's called Dedicated Senior Medical Center. There's 3 of them in the county. Riviera Beach is very lucky to have this. It's a concierge VIP service for low to middle income seniors who have Medicare. We offer free transportation within a 10-mile radius from our center. Our center is located at the northeast corner of Blue Heron and Broadway, not too far from here, in the Island Plaza. We offer a UberX transportation for our seniors within a 10-mile radius. We bring them in, we treat them like family. We are dedicated to their health care. It's a one-stop shop. They see one primary care physician. They'll be able to see specialists that we will have on site. We have open area where they can communicate with one another. They don't get lost in the cracks. It's something that is the way it should have been practiced. They should be practicing health care like this now. This is the way they used to practice it. We're based on a health model of keeping people out of the hospital and really treating them like family and trying to get them healthy. So we deal with multiple issues. They can get their labs done at the center. They can do EKGs, ultrasounds. We even have activities. We also have acupuncture for them. So it's a really holistic approach that we're doing. I'm going out doing some grassroots, partnering with churches, community centers, things like that. So we all are heading that way. We're all going to be seniors at some point. They're extremely important to our community. So I just want to bring awareness to that. So I'll get some brochures and I have business cards.
Thank you.
And I'm going around to different areas.
Well, thank you so very much.
You're very welcome.
Let's give it some more publicity.
Okay.
So if you could, again, state the name, the location, and if you have a phone number, feel free.
Absolutely. It's a dedicated senior medical center. It's on the northeast corner of Broadway and Blue Heron. Like I said, we offer a concierge VIP service for seniors. And we really are trying to keep them healthy, so keep them out of the hospital and having activities for them as well as the best health care that we can possibly give them.
And it's Jeff?
My name is Jeff.
Jeff, your first and...
Jeff
is
Thompson.
Okay,
Yes.
Mr. Thompson.
I'm a membership growth consultant for the Dedicated Senior Center.
Okay, great, for people to reach out to you.
Exactly.
Is that in the former bank building that
It's near, there's a laundromat and CSL Plasma, I think, where people donate plasma. And there's
It's
a
up a
dollar
little
thing.
bit north.
Yeah,
Right.
it's
I
called
saw
Island
something.
Plaza, yeah.
it's up a little?
We have
further?
another medical center in Green Acres and one in Del Rey, and it started out in Miami. We have like 3 centers down there, and we're growing. We have like 60 centers. We're going up the east coast of the country. So
So do you
you'll
have
hear
any,
more about us.
do you have any cards or anything, brochures with you tonight?
I have business cards, and I'll have brochures.
All right,
I
I'm
just
gonna
started
try to
with
get
them
one.
about 3 weeks ago.
Got it.
We did the ribbon cutting. We had the mayor of the city there, and we had some pastors from some of the churches.
Excellent.
So
Got it. Perfect.
it's going to be a great thing for the community.
Yes,
It
it
really
is.
is. Thank you, guys.
Okay, thank you, Jeff.
Excuse me, Jeff. May I ask you one question?
Absolutely, Mark.
Is there one in the old Ivy Green? Because I heard there's supposed to be one, it's supposed to be one in the old Ivy Green, the Heron Estates. That's what it's called now.
I don't know. A medical center, you mean? Or-
Yes, it's
Oh,
supposed to be a medical center. Is it your center?
no, we only have 3 here in Palm Beach County. We have the one here in Riviera Beach, one in Del Rey off of West Atlantic, and one in Green Acres, 10th Avenue.
Okay.
So that's the three we have here.
Okay, it's supposed to be another one there at the Old Ivy Green. Maybe
Yeah, I don't know.
it's not
I'm
you.
not sure, it's not one of ours, so.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Thank you. I'll
Oh, you're very
ask.
welcome.
I'll
And I
ask
have business
them.
cards. We all know seniors, and if you know anybody that could
Exactly.
benefit from this, let me
Okay,
know.
may I have
Thank-
one?
Great.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much. Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, next, correspondence. Mr. Gagnon?
None for tonight's meeting.
Okay, and C, Planning and Zoning Board comments, and I think we went over the project updates and upcoming projects. Did we do that already with that mapping?
Yeah, that was the intent of the workshop item.
Okay.
We do have anticipated for our December 12th meeting, a project along the Blue Heron corridor, which is a commercial project just north of Avenue P. It's just simply called Blue Heron Commercial Project. So we are anticipating that coming before the Planning and Zoning Board on our December 12th meeting.
Okay, all right. Let's start at the end of any board comments, and we'll move on down the line, and then we'll adjourn. Ms. Shepherd?
No, I don't think I have one offhand.
Okay.
Thank you.
No comment.
No additional comment.
No comment.
No comment.
No comment.
None either. Okay, and at this point, do I need to have anything accepted, or just to go ahead and ask for adjournment?
What about the gentleman to your,
He said no comment.
oh. Okay. I didn't hear it, I'm sorry.
Sounds like there's no further business, so if it pleases the board, you may adjourn the meeting.
I move we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Meeting adjourned. Good job, everyone.
Good job.